Leah Robinson is here, and we're getting excited for Theology Beer Camp. And I said, Leah, I want to ask you three really important questions. Like, they're so important, they could even be kind of a teaser, a taster for people coming to hang out with us in Chapel Hill. And you said you said you were going to talk to me on the internet.
I know that sounded a lot more nefarious than I thought it was going to sound. Did you pick three for a reason?
Yeah.
Do you have some? Yeah.
Yeah, I picked
Why?
three because obviously the Trinity and the teaser episodes are supposed to be it's like a teaser. It's supposed to be short. It's supposed to be short. It'd be alluring. And I tried recording one last week with Jennifer Bashaw, and then it went longer than anticipated. So I said, I'm just going to go in with a 3-question agenda. So are you ready? Are you ready? I mean,
Oh, see, here's the deal. You need to give me 3 questions because you know that I can talk for forever. So
all right.
go for it.
Question
I'm ready.
number
3
one.
questions.
Question number one.
Yes.
You are a practical theologian. So what in the world is practical theology? And how what makes theology practical? Like, what are the kind of questions, suspicions that a practical theologian brings to the task of thinking theologically?
Well, you already know my line for this. It's just going to be repeated again. There are no theologians. We're all practical theologians, is my line. Practical theology is theology. And if it's not practical theology, it's been abstracted to a painful degree, usually by men in brown shoes. However, practical theology is theology that you do out in the world. Because what is the point of theology if you're not actually doing anything with it? So you can look at theology in terms of ministry, which historically it has been, because of course that's doing theology. And then you can also look at it, well, you can look at it a bunch of different ways, but usually what I do is I look at it from a qualitative research perspective. So I see what other people are doing out in the world, and then I judge them accordingly from my place high atop the ivory tower. So that is what practical theology is. It's theology that's being acted out in the world, and you can view it from the inside or the outside or the middle side. So,
well, the theme this year at Theology Beer Camp is experiencing God. So when a practical theologian gets that question and starts to think about what are the kind of touchstones or reference points or intuitions you bring to thinking about a rather gigantic topic, experiencing
yeah.
God.
Yeah, and practical theologians actually have a way better position to look at experiencing God because we don't assume that we know the mentality of God, which some people do.
I could tell it to you later. Don't worry.
Oh, thank you so
All right.
much. I needed a white male to tell me all about
I thought so. I thought so. Well, if they're ordained with multiple graduate degrees, they're the best kind.
I've been told such things throughout my
Yeah.
whole life.
Good.
And sometimes they're the only ones that can talk to God. It's very
Convenient.
very exclusive after a while. No, I think people who do practical theology don't really assume, and even some systematicians who say, we don't say we know the mind of God. We're just trying to figure out what God's about. Okay, sure. I still think that's equally pretentious, whatever. But practical theologians say, what we're really interested in and have been from the beginning is the experience of God. So it can be your own experiences, or it can be how people, in congregations or indeed the world experience God. So depending on how you study practical theology, you're looking at those experiences and what's happening kind of at ground level. So, I mean, I think I have a far easier time going through that theme than some other people might. So yay, good job on picking that theme.
as a practical theologian that's just finished up a book coming out soon on bad theology, are there ways that our theology frames our expectations that are ultimately problematic or problematizing to spiritual seekers engaging wisdom traditions like Christianity.
Yeah. Yeah, I did just finish. Thank you. I don't want all of the confetti. Yes, I'll take it. I'll take it. There was an email that I got that said it was sent and it had the congratulations thing on it, and I've never been so happy about 365. Um, so yeah, the book that I'm currently working on is really, again, taking that qualitative research methodology that practical theologians really love to task. And it's also looking historically at different examples of where basically people have done theology and have said they are doing theology. And it has actually turned out to be an incredibly damaging, evil system that they've created. But they've used it. They've used logic, and they've used philosophy to say, no, here's the logic. It's just the logic. The end result is something that is usually violent or deadly. So, it's one of those things where with the practical theological task is that we say we've all got logic. You can take that damn book and make anything out of it. I mean, so we're looking at the logic and saying, okay, does the logic fit? Unfortunately, sometimes it does. Okay, well, what's the result? Because sometimes we just look at the logic and we say, well, they made logical sense. So, or they used faulty logic and they're not really doing Christianity. Well, they are, because they just took a left turn where you took a right turn, but that left turn made them super racist. So, it's looking at that kind of system and trying to kind of push back on some of the presumptions that we have, that when we look at this and, we're looking at people like the KKK or, Nazis or, Jim Jones or something, that they were not really doing Christianity. They're not really doing theology. And practical theologians are screaming and pulling our hair out saying, no, they absolutely are. They're just doing it in a bad way. We don't like looking at our faults. So that's what the book is about. And that's, I think, what we do with, and I'm not the first one to do it, certainly, but hopefully it's a new take on it.
Well, I think that one of the impacts of bad theology that's becoming more and more clear, even if I'm sure it had impact before, are those who grew up in religious context where the encounter with the divine was so framed by bad theology that then to when you do the right thing, right, and move yourself into safer spaces, ones that aren't as toxic, abusive, trauma giving, and all that kind of stuff, that then to use the word God again to think about experiencing or encountering the divine, to do so when you don't know how to trust institutions and communities, or that so many of the images, stories, and rituals and such have been given it's like the Oreo cream got taken out and they put arsenic in, and they're like, it's called the double stuff, I mean, I guess if you don't like Oreos, the analogy doesn't work. But as someone who's spent a lot of time thinking about the impact of bad theology and then what it looks like practically on the ground and maybe coming out of it, do you have wisdom or advice of how to re-engage um, the word God or religious traditions and practices in ways that don't bring all that kind of baggage?
Well, that's the I want to say the 90s 2000s evangelical kids tasks, isn't it? How did we end up back in this again? Especially if you grew up in the South. Um, I think it's normalizing it in a way. It's saying, and that's part of my task, I think. And I'm doing a second book that's going to look at COVID, so I get to do more contemporary stuff. But it's normalizing the idea that there's bad theology. And because when I was growing up, I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, bless my heart. We never had this idea that theology was nuanced in any way. It was just what was presented was it, And I think when we start to look at things in a way where we can say, okay, some people are doing this with agendas. Some people are doing this in certain ways. Some people are being racist or sexist or ageist or fill in the blank, ableist, they're doing this through a lens. Everyone's doing it through a lens, though. It's not just the people who are doing bad theology. We, yes, if you want to go the Holy Spirit route, inspired. It's not just that damn book, as I said, right? But we're still producing things through a human lens. When I write a book, I'm writing it through my brain, So I think it's normalizing the idea that this stuff is subjective. And for so long, we've put people on pedestals who we oftentimes make it seem as though they really do have that direct link. And I think I would have loved to, as a young girl growing up in Georgia in the Baptist church, I would have loved to have heard someone say, well, there's another way to look at this. That's maybe not the best translation of that, here's a different angle. I didn't know anything about liberation theology whenever I was, in high school. So I think that's something I have a great, great sympathy as someone who left the church for a while because of what I saw as grave injustices in relation to, gender and sexuality specifically. I did come back, but I came back with a mission of, okay, this is what I feel like I'm supposed to do, is to show those nuances. Because some people maybe want to come back. Who says that those people get to rule the church? I want my church back. I want to go back to church, So that's sort of, I think, the task that one can do to kind of say, and again, I always say this, you don't want to go full on just like nothing matters, there is no truth, because that can also lead to a pretty sad foundation as well. But the idea that there's multiple ways to view a certain thing.
Yeah. I think that some people's experience of leaving behind kind of the faith of their birth that they were born into is sometimes it's a breakup with the institution for whatever reasons the institution does, and others it's a breakup with the institution and God. And sometimes it's whether or not the individuals, the positive experiences they had, are something they want to figure out how to cherish and preserve. And other times, if it's just how totalitarian the place was, right? So, and I wonder if there's what did you learn in your own experience, both you're going through the whole process of ending up a professor and such, while you're also working out your salvation again, hopefully with the more appropriate fear and trembling.
Yes, less hellfire and more feminist, indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it was one of those things where I often get questioned by my students. They're like, you seem like you're really taking the church to task. And I'm like, and yet you're a reverend, you're ordained in the very thing. And it's quite right. And I think that was the only way that I could come back. I wasn't mad at God. I was mad that there was nothing I could do about what people were telling me about God, just actively. And I think for me, I just felt, I have this mug that's my favorite mug in the whole world. And it says, it's got a picture of Jesus, that like Sacred Heart picture. And it just says, guys, I didn't say that. And I felt like that was perpetually what I was thinking about. I was like, where are they getting this stuff from? Like these ministers and leaders. And so I think in coming back, there wasn't going to be, at least for me, a coming back where I was just gonna be like religious on Sundays and get, I thought about getting a PhD in psychology at one stage. And that was a path, that was an option. But if I was going to come back, I was going to come back as an expert and an insider, so that when I did come into contact with people who previously had made me feel kind of like I was nothing, that I could say, no, I studied this. Like I know this now. And it wasn't some sort of ego thing, because I didn't want to become the thing that I hated. But it was this idea that I wanted to be able to talk as one with authority, or I didn't want to talk at all. And so those are my options. Some people walk away, and if anyone understands it, I do. I completely understand it, because I did for a little while, but then I came back.
I think that desire to kind of understand it and get to know the tradition and such in a deep way can be really empowering. And hopefully everyone doesn't have to go get a divinity degree to do it. They can listen to a podcast. But what's fascinating to me is how many people's experience is one where it's like they were given like one small room of the Christian tradition, and then whoever's at gatekeeping that one's like, this is the only one. On the outside of this is eternal conscious torment, dear friends. They probably let women talk and care about justice issues, which means they're like part of the feminist agenda and socialist, and so there's always this like, wow, like you would sometimes you can't tell if like Saint Basil is a communist or a Christian minister. If you ask him about income inequality, like there's so many parts of the Christian tradition, and if you were born into the wrong space, you're given such a narrow slice that I think one of the challenges in this taking place more and more in American religion is letting people know, oh no, there's like whole other rooms in this giant house of a religious tradition. And a lot of them, you'll be like celebrated for being there. You can have all your questions you want. They might be trying to peer pressure you into getting organized for all sorts of issues that you think are important. And we're told to side, those aren't important. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was
No,
there,
I
was
mean,
there
I
a
think that's
particular
right.
part when you started that journey? Was there a particular like figure or movement or question where when you found out you had allies in the big extended family of Jesus, you're like, oh hell yeah, I know now. I can't wait to tell younger me about so and so, or other people struggling with those same questions.
Yeah. I had people telling me I was good at theology. It was professors. That's why I wanted to be a professor. I went to undergraduate to a Baptist undergraduate, and I had a professor say, I was a psych major because I was like, I am not doing this religion stuff. I was so not into it. And he said, you're very good at this. Like, you need to do this. You need to come to the dark side. And what happened over and over again, not that it's just about someone patting you on the head and telling you you're good at something, but what I discovered is I actually was interested in it. Like, the reason I was so good at it wasn't because I'm some genius. It was because I actually was invested. At undergraduate, you have to be invested, right? So I was invested in it in a way that I think I was really pushing back against. I don't know if anyone in the history of majors has pushed back against being a religion major as much as I did while being a religion major. I was like, I hate this. No, I don't. I love it. So people told me, that professor told me, he said, you should go to seminary. I said, I got into do a master's in psych. I was like, I don't even know that can I go to seminary? Like, in the Baptist world? And he's like, absolutely you can. And so there I went. And then after that, I had a professor tell me, you really need to go get your PhD. Like, you need to whatever. So I had physical allies like in my life, but I also had people that I started to read that opened my world up. And it was, the liberation theologians, speaking of, those dirty communists, they really hooked me in, specifically feminist Black and queer theology. When I started reading, Joan Cohn and Marcella and, Mary Daly and things like that. I was just like, wait a minute. I used to live in a hut. Now I live in a mansion. Did I agree with everything? No. I thought some of it was wacky, but it didn't matter, see, because they didn't say that you had to. It wasn't the hellfire. It was, we're presenting this, and if you don't agree with it, get in line, when we're okay with that. And I think that's sort of the mentality. And then when I met practical theologians, I learned that, one, we were apparently at the bottom of some weird other hierarchy, that the intellectuals, which we were supposed to be better than this, we created another hierarchy with the systematic and the philosophical, blah, blah, blah. And then we're at the bottom. We did it to ourselves again. We said, we are going to be the most brilliant minds in the world, and we are going to bust down all of this oppression. And then we created a damn triangle. We did it again within our group. But reading them and embracing that practical theologian and saying, okay, fine, you guys can go call me a communist. I don't care. It's fine. Say I'm not doing real theology. It's okay, because I didn't care anymore, because I read those people who didn't. And it was liberating to not worry about someone not agreeing with you. And that to me was a total turning point. To be able to say, that's okay. That's fine. And it not be, you're going to burn forever.
Yeah, I do think it's hard for those of us that didn't have the I didn't grow up in a context where the eternal conscious torment thing was like ingrained in me in traumatic ways.
Great. It's a great.
And so it's fascinating to me when people that did, like when they leave that behind, it's like refreshing. And then often I'll get messages where they're like, so, well, what's the point of Christianity and stuff if you think like God ultimately redeems all things, or there's no like eternal conscious torment, and that, which I'm like more than happy to attempt to answer it, but like as a practical theologian,
because we have to live in this world.
Yeah.
We have to live in this world. Sorry to bring up Marx, but this is Marx's exact argument. Is this is going to go down in history with me, but he said, they get you thinking so much about the afterlife and get you thinking this life is very temporary and very short. So you're gonna work yourself to death, and it's totally fine, because one day you're going to get to go to the happy land. Practical theologians, sorry I interrupted you, but say we have to live in this world for a time. And you know what we know? We know this world. We don't know what's happening after this world. So how about we focus a little bit on this situation that we're dealing with? That's the point. And it just, it makes me excited, because I'm like, are we just doing this to secure ourselves a place in the afterlife? Or are we doing it to actually live out a Christian religion? Now, those can go hand in hand. But if you're living out in the world, you need to be doing something. And that's what practical theologians are saying, is that, yes, let's write all the books about creation and salvation and redemption and atonement. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But like, also talk about like what, Sally down the street is doing for Sunday service. Anyway. There's my rant. Your trailer.
I like your rants. I like your rants. So the last important thing to check in on is like, are you feeling prepared for high quality karaoke? Like like it's coming in just a week. Thursday night.
I thought you were gonna sort of like eschatological question, like, are you prepared? I was gonna be like, wow, this just took a turn. Well, it took a turn back to the southern world.
We're not calling anyone up yonder just to the karaoke microphone.
Oh, I'm so ready for karaoke. I sent a friend who's not religious a link to this just so they could look at it, and they said, "You mean there's beer and an academic conference? Where has this been all my life?" And I was like, "Ha ha ha!" Ready for? Although I'm not a beer drinker, as you know, but I'm gonna have my red wine prepared.
Well, do you think that that me and you and Sarah Lane Ritchie could do a song together?
Yes, Dixie Chicks. Isn't there three of them?
Oh,
Oh wait,
well,
they're not the Dixie. They're the Chicks now. But
they're
yes,
the chicks. And you know what? I've never been a chick before, so I feel like this is a perfect opportunity.
I think Earl Had to Die is a pretty good one.
It
So
it.
we could test Sarah's southern accent. You're really gonna have to play. I don't have to play mine up, but you're gonna have to play yours up, and because Sarah's from up north, right? She's not
Yeah,
from.
Michigan, and
Oh
then
well.
lived overseas and before college and after. So
I mean, if
yeah.
anyone has any trios, they can comment. That was the first karaoke trio that came into my mind because I feel like they've got some good tunes for that.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. It shall be grand.
Oh, you've not seen a karaoke like a Practical Theologian karaoke? I mean, when everything is possible, anything is possible. So there you go.
Praise the Lord.
Praise the
Praise the
Lord.
Lord.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, I will see you very soon.
I will.